Rink Rizzies, Rink Rats, what's up? Happy Thanksgiving week. Hope you're all doing well. We're back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here with Eric Andrews and Jimmy O'Malley, and hopefully Sean Fitzgerald will be joining us soon enough. But anyway, we got some Hawks talk coming up right now, and we want to get into some of the topics before their final game before Thanksgiving tomorrow night. And how we doing tonight, fellas? Eric, welcome back. Missed you last week, buddy. What's going on?
Not a whole lot. I'm really just here tonight to take in what I believe will be a pretty entertaining speech, if you will, from Jimmy later on. And then, of course, everyone looks forward to the weekly Sean Fitzgerald CHSN rant. So hopefully Sean is able to make it later, and I can grab some popcorn for that.
Yeah, we need Sean. We do not have an understudy for his role with the CHSN TV debacle, and so both he and Jimmy have been rehearsing in front of the mirror this week. So, Jimmy, how have rehearsals been going, and are you ready when we start talking about your favorite topic, Lukas Reichel, when we get into it in a few minutes here?
Oh, I'm very excited.
He's more excited that the Vikings beat the Bears in overtime, despite the fact that the Vikings made every effort to give it away, and the Bears still couldn't.
You guys just want to take it, so I guess we just had to take it.
Unbelievable. Chicago sports, ladies and gentlemen. Well, anyway, we're going to get to Lukas Reichel in a minute, but we want to start the show, and Eric and I had kind of a healthy DMing debate about it on a Saturday afternoon about Luke Richardson. So Luke Richardson, depending on who you talk to, is on the hot seat, according to some. Maybe the seat is just starting to warm right now. Maybe it's just ice cold and everything is just fine. The bottom line is right now the Blackhawks, they're not winning games. And it's not only that they're not winning, it's the way that they're losing. And it's the number of players that aren't producing. So Luke Richardson right now, a lot of people are saying, all right, well, if there's a change to be made, it's got to be Luke. Maybe it's time to take a look at the coach and he's got to go. I feel one way particularly about it. But Eric, is it time right now to start looking at Luke Richardson as one of the changes that the Hawks need to make now in order to try to save their season? Or is this just a lost season and let's just deal with this another time?
It is very much a lost season. And I think a lot of people would say that Luke Richardson is not ultimately the reason why they are where they are. Is he helping anything? No, not necessarily. And I will also say up front, as we're entering this conversation, that I am by no means like you got to keep him. He's the long-term answer. None of that. Like, I'm pretty indifferent about him. One thing you always say, Andy, is we don't really know what he's capable of. And I think that's very true.
Very true.
He's never had, a competent roster to work with. So it's hard to genuinely kind of just assess, his coaching ability. So, yeah, I would agree, Brennan. It's a lost season, and I don't think that anything Luke Richardson is going to do is going to change that, and I don't think that any other coach that would be coming in is going to change that. I know that's something that Jeff has talked about in our group chat on Twitter. I don't think it's really a matter of who is calling the shots this season as much as it is that this is just a broken team.
Yeah. I do think, though, I guess I feel strongly, though, that a lot of people are saying, well, no one's going to get anything out of this group. I actually disagree with that. Do I think that there is a coach out there that would get more out of this group than Luke Richardson has? I do. Is that guy available right now? Probably not. And so I don't think that right now is the time to just shut him down and move on from him. Do I think this should be Luke Richardson's last season if a better coach becomes available this summer? I do. I think 61 more games this year is enough of a sample size with 2 previous years to do that. I guess where I'm stuck too is that it's like everyone's saying, well, the roster construction isn't that great. But if you were to look back when the roster, should we expect more from Teuvo Teravainen? Should we expect more from Taylor Hall? Should we expect more from Tyler Bertuzzi? Should we be expecting more from Connor Bedard, who is lost right now in his hockey game? And is there a coach that would make those guys produce better? I do think there is. Sorry, that was broken English, but you get the point. Is like, yeah, those guys should be playing better, in my opinion. And sooner or later, you can blame the players, but you got to look at the coach at some point. Jimmy, what say you?
Yeah, when you guys were debating heavily in the chat, I kind of came in and
we were having some fun. Yeah,
it sounded like you're having fun. And I pointed out, it's like, and kind of as you were saying, if Luke gets fired, there's no one saving this roster. I said at the time, Monty isn't coming in and saving this hellhole, and he is now signed with the Blues to a 5-year deal. Congrats to him. And would you realistically rather see Derek King as the head coach of this team for the rest of the season? Because
whatever, yeah,
he would be the guy probably.
Oh man, again, Jimmy. Well, better now than in a Reichel tirade that we lost you again.
That's true.
Man, this was supposed to be my role, Jimmy. When the freezing role, that was mine. Now you're taking the camera freezing. Oh, he's back. All right. Yeah. Continue.
I mean, as I was saying, there's no, as I said earlier, there's no one coming to save the roster. There's no coach coming to save the team. It's, Richardson has to save his job through the last 60 games of the season, and the team has to save themselves by picking themselves up and playing better. And I don't know how Richardson is influencing the guys in the locker room, but from what I'm hearing, it just looks like Bedard feels defeated. And we can say that veterans like Foligno need to pick him up and be a good teammate. But I think it's reasonable to say Luke Richardson also should motivate the guy that is expected to be the franchise player, to pull him into his room and say, hey, like, you got this. I got you. I'm doing everything I can to set you up. I will do everything I can as a coach to get you out of this.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't feel that confidence from his coach, then I'm worried, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could assume those conversations are happening. I mean,
I can assume because I'm
Connor Bedard and Luke Richardson are talking. I think it's just one of those. I mean, now you're seeing, a guy who was a stay-at-home defenseman for his entire NHL career, kind of fixing the defensive mechanisms of the hockey team right now. Like defensively, they're definitely better than they were last year. Mm-hmm. And they're a little bit better in the back. I mean, Vlasic has obviously made huge strides this year. When Connor Murphy's healthy, he's very reliable. Seth Jones is out right now. But it's the way that they're losing. I think that's what's just so frustrating as a fan is like, we can take losses at this stage of the Blackhawks rebuild, or you should be expected to take losses. But these aren't like 6-5 losses where Bedard's scoring and you're seeing growth of this team and you're seeing it's just this constant offensive apathy night in and night out. And I think that's what's making it so hard to stomach is that they were supposed to make strides offensively with some of the players that they acquired, and it's just not happening. Bertuzzi looks like he's stuck in mud. Teravainen will make one great play, and then he'll make a pass where you're like, where are you going with that? Like, what is going on? Hall is very inconsistent. Donato had some flashes early, but he's certainly cooled off. And Foligno's been just downright brutal lately. So would you say, I'm not going to add Sean to the stage yet because I'm upset with him, but because he's late. But would you say this? Hey, what's the over under your prediction, Eric? Is this Luke Richardson's last season?
I will say yes, and a large part of that is because his contract is up at the end of this season. Yep. There is a team option for next season. So if Kyle Davidson does think that, whether it's just what he's done so far or if they do see noticeable progress in the last 60 games, maybe they decide to bring him back. But yeah, I mean, given that this is officially his last season totally under contract, if Davidson does not feel that he is the long-term guy, then go ahead and make that change this summer.
Yeah, I agree with that. Sean Fitzgerald has joined us, ladies and gentlemen. He's currently living in Illinois. He's wearing a Notre Dame sweatshirt and a Boston Red Sox hat, though. So he would make a lot of friends in my neck of the woods, that's for sure. Sean, yeah. Why are you late? And maybe we shouldn't force you to come up with a bad excuse.
That's true. I don't. I'm good. I'm good. I am good. I apologize for being late.
No, sorry. What are your thoughts on the Luke Richardson's situation? Or there might not even be a situation. I mean, this is like manifested by angry fans, me being one of them.
Well, yeah, but I didn't. Greg Wyshynski also mentioned something, or Elliot Friedman mentioned something earlier this week that he could be. It's only a matter of when, not if.
Yep.
So,
which everyone would agree with 2 years ago.
For sure, everyone would agree with 2 years ago, but I think the lack of offensive improvement and Bedard's struggle this year is really lit the match under this thing.
Mhm.
I think with Bedard not playing up to his potential offensively and the team really not showing any improvement overall as a whole, I think it's definitely started the clock on this. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's not renewed. Like if they don't pick up his player option, like Eric said, that would be the easiest thing to do. If it gets down where they have like a 15-game losing streak or something Jeremy Colleton-esque, he might be fired on the spot, and they'll just turn it over to Derek King again.
Yeah,
and we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I think I'm going to stick with what Eric said. So
got it. And you got the thumbs up on the screen, by the way.
yeah, apparently I didn't change that. So
Something you always say, you get a thumbs up. Maybe we'll get the balloons in the background too. I really hope so.
well,
Yeah, I don't know. I
Joker
can see the
doesn't steal.
renewal. Yeah, I mean, if you include Richardson, the last three, head coaches the Blackhawks have had with Richardson, King, and Jeremy Colleton, there hasn't been a whole lot of NHL experience in there. And the Colleton piece, though, is I don't know. Every time I say his name, like I get a shiver down my spine. I was like, ah. But I mean, that was one that was very public. The players did not like him. I mean, when Brent Seabrook is just like, this is ridiculous. Like, what is he doing here? Like this guy's
Seabrook had good reason too, because he put him in the press box.
Yeah.
For no reason, and then they were trying to play a system that only worked in Sweden. Hybrid man is not working in the NHL, and everybody but Stan Bowman knew that. So, Jeremy Colleton.
Well, that's the other thing with Richardson that I don't know. It's so confusing. And the randomness of his healthy scratches to try to get guys going seems so desperate, in my opinion. And perhaps it is. I mean, I don't know. Kurashev has been just trash this year. He's been so bogus after.
Well, I think it's more just he's been what he is. Last year was an anomaly, and I think anyone thinking that last year was not an anomaly is fooling themselves.
Well, no, I agree with that too. But I mean, I still think he should be better than what he's been, though. I mean, he has been brutal.
He hasn't done much of anything.
Now, the lines tomorrow night, Jimmy, you were saying, or the lines in practice, that might, I know we're, as Gate said, shuffling the deck chairs in the Titanic, but the lines actually look like, okay, maybe this is something. With at least that top line with Hall, Kurashev, and Bedard, and putting Bedard back with Kurashev where they had success together last year. Do you think maybe this will change the thing, or are we just recycling at this point?
You're hoping so. I remember seeing in the game against Philly when they put Hall with Bedard later in the game, they started to get some offense going on that line. So you're hoping that this team can continue that trend, although very small trend, only half a game. But yeah, I mean, it seems like Richardson is now saying, okay, I need offensive-minded forwards on his wings. Who gives a bleep about the defensive prowess on the guys on his wing? I'll just expect the defenseman to back him up, and I'll live with that.
We'll bail him out again.
Yeah. And he's like, I'll live with that. And I think a lot of fans probably feel the same way. It's like, all right, if he gets goals against because his forwards were too aggressive in offensive zone, they had a 2-on-1 break, we'll live with that because we want Bedard to be aggressive in the offensive zone.
Yeah. No, I agree. The other thing too is, I mean, like last year, the team had so many defensive woes. One is Kevin Korchinski was a regular, which he's not anymore, and for good reason. He's in the AHL, doing pretty well, trying to figure it out. And then the other thing is both Mrazek and Arvid Soderblom have been terrific. Soderblom, I mean, he's 1-4, but his save percentage is 92%. So it's been great that the back end, but it's the only 2 goals a game is getting a little tough.
Yeah. I was listening to Eric pointed out the Chicago Breakaway podcast earlier today. I listened to that episode with Charlie and Good Time Patty Boyle, and they had mentioned that Kurashev being on Bedard's wing, he's going to play left wing, I believe, and I believe that's what they said, and that the reason they think Bedard's going to like that more is because Kurashev then can snap off the one-timer. Earlier this year, Kurashev had only played right wing for him.
Kurashev's a left-handed shot?
I believe so.
He is. So if he's on the left wing, one-timers are going to be tough.
I'm sorry, I meant the right wing. If he played the left wing with him earlier. Not that it really matters aside from like the start of the game. or the start of the shift. But that's what they were saying, that maybe that'll benefit Bedard more in that regard.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, so they were mentioning that. And then I think Bedard's just putting a lot of pressure on himself. Like, with the world, that tournament coming up, he wanted to make the team. It's his second year.
I don't see that happening
now. No. It's second year in the league. He's the face of the franchise. Yep. They're supposed to win this year, and he's not scoring. And if if they'd scored more goals, because right now they're like 19th in the league in save percentage, I believe, something around that. And they're 31st in the league in goals for. If they would score one more goal a game, or average one more goal a game, they would be a much improved record-wise team. They would be about what we said they'd be.
So you're saying if they score more, they'll be better?
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
Yes. Good. I know. It's hard. I know logic is
this
hard
is analytics.
These days.
Fascinating.
I didn't say it in a semantical, fancy way.
No, you didn't. Yeah, you didn't do all.
I wasn't
these
whimsical with it, if you were.
All this nonsense to try to prove your point.
Yeah.
Basically, said if they score more, they'll win more games. Yeah.
Let's not forget that Sean is an intellectual heavyweight.
There you go. There you go. It's kind of the Billy Bean logic. If you get on base, you score more runs.
Yeah.
Do I care if it's a walk or a hit? No,
I do not.
I do not. Yeah. Awesome. Well, in that spirit, one thing I just want to throw, we're going to talk about advanced stats and how it pertains to a certain player. Jimmy has been ready for about 7 or 8 hours. So we're going to start with him on this. But I just want to make one quick point, folks. Those of you that are terrified about Connor Bedard and his season so far, keep in mind Nathan McKinnon in his second season, his sophomore campaign, in 64 games, he had 38 points, and that was it.
He had 53 points in his fourth year in the NHL.
There you go. He's pretty good at hockey. And so be patient with Connor Bedard. He's going to be just fine. It's all a process. We're probably going to look back on this and say, hey, what a tough time for the kid, and now he's great. Anyway, let's move on. Lukas Reichel. Lukas Reichel has had a great start to the season. He's been great. Last year, we wrote an article, the Rink wrote an article in early November about Lukas Reichel, and is this in the crossroads of his career, and where's he going to go? He was still kind of at that point in the beginning of the season. Everyone's going, man, what is going to happen with this kid? Even though he re-signed. Now, he has been playing with Craig Smith and Pat Maroon. He has had a very good start. It's 17 games so far this season. And Lukas Reichel has a very modest 8 points, but at the same time, he's got 2 goals. He's got 6 assists. He's even, and he's playing in a limited role, and he's performing pretty well. He's on the right side of the puck. He's with Maroon. He's with Smith. Those guys have seen it all in the NHL, particularly Pat Maroon. And there are those out there in the Blackhawk fan base saying, well, wait a minute, because he's always in these right positions, he should be playing more. He should be on a higher line. He should be doing this. He should be doing that. They're not giving Lukas Reichel enough ice time. Jimmy O'Malley wants to break this down, and particularly how it pertains to advanced statistics for those that want to support this argument by looking at advanced stats. Jimmy, what have you got for us tonight?
All right. I have practiced this so much.
Get your popcorn, folks. Get your gummy bears.
Let's start with the premise. The premise is simply Lukas Reichel deserves more minutes. Now, that's the premise.
Yep.
To this premise, I ask 3 simple questions. The first question is, okay, if he deserves more minutes, does that mean statistically he performs better with more minutes? Now, I went back through his base stats and found an almost even split between games of over 13 minutes of ice time and under 13 minutes of ice time for Lukas Reichel. Over 13 minutes of ice time, it was 8 games, 0 goals, 3 assists, plus or minus a 0, 13 shots on goal. Under 13 minutes of ice time in a game, 8 games, 2 goals, 3 assists, plus or minus a 0, 16 shots on goal. Essentially equivalent. So the problem is, if your argument is that Lukas Reichel deserves more minutes because with more minutes he can be more productive, already we've seen outside of that bottom 6 role and 4th line role, He doesn't increase his game. In fact, he hasn't even scored a goal in games where he's expected with more minutes. Now, that's the first question that I would raise to push against the idea that he needs more minutes. The second is obvious to me, at least. Does he perform better with guys who are traditionally in top 6? Because when you get more minutes, you have to move up the lineup unless you're moving the entire lineup. And if you were to look at his rates in Corsi percentage, Fenwick, goals for, shots, scoring chances, high danger scoring chance percentage, high danger goal percentage, any percentage you can think of, his best statistical numbers across the board, every single one of their stats are with Craig Smith and Pat Maroon. Pat Maroon, he's had 96 minutes so far of ice time. Craig Smith, 108. And away from these guys, these stats and rates drop dramatically. I'm not talking 1 or 2 percentage points. I'm talking 10, 11, 12. Corsi percentage with Craig Smith, 43. Without him, 30. With Craig Smith, Pat Maroon, Corsi, 42. Without him, 28. It drops off the map the second you ask him to get away from these guys. Now, this next forward, which he has the most minutes with of the season, is ironically Connor Bedard. Now, here's what I'm going to point out. His Corsi width in what was 44 minutes of ice time, which is not a chump, not chump change. That's a decent amount of experience with him. Just Corsi, his percentage with 26.25, without 43.11. That isn't really a 20-point increase in Corsi away from Connor Bedard. Same with Fenwick, 32% with, 32% with, 45% without. So it's pretty obvious that he doesn't perform well when you give him other line mates not named Pat Maroon and Craig Smith. Now, the third and final question I would ask is, does he make players better when he comes up in the lineup? Let's look at Connor Bedard. Corsi without Reichel, 47. Fenwick without Reichel, 47. Shot percentage, 48. When he's with Reichel, 31. Mm-hmm. And this is just Connor Bedard. You can look at any other forward, Teuvo Teravainen, Tyler Bertuzzi, Philip Kurashev, Nick Foligno. It's essentially the same trend. So the problem I have, again, with the premise, going on those two questions, if the premise is he needs more minutes, when he goes with guys that also require a lot of minutes, he doesn't perform well, and those players don't perform well with him. Now,
Jimmy, could you quickly explain Corsi and Fenwick to other humanities, liberal arts people like myself?
Sure. I'm reading off naturalstattrick.com. Their definition of Corsi is any shot attempt, goal, shots on net, misses, and blocks outside of a shootout, referred to as SAT by the NHL. Now, Corsi percentage is percentage of total Corsi while that player is on the ice that are for that player's team. So CF times 100 divided by counts of Corsi for that player's team while the player's on the ice, and counts of Corsi against that player's team while he's on the ice.
Got it.
Fenwick, similar thing. Any unblocked shot attempt outside of the shootout. So Corsi and Fenwick are a good way of understanding a player's offensive role with other players.
So bottom line, he's getting more chances playing with Smith and with Maroon than he does with any other player historically.
Yes. And, historically meaning this season.
The
math of Eric is
Yeah.
And not only that, he takes a dramatic dip in production across the board in most of these advanced stats with any other forward, and any other forward takes a massive dip when they're playing with him.
Right. So essentially, folks, this kid he's 22 years old. He's in his 4th year as a pro, and I think that's why the expectations are so high. He's still relying on older, more experienced players to make him better. He's still not in a position to make other people better right now. Yeah, go ahead.
John. And back on all the fancy stat stuff too, the fourth line has been one of the most productive lines together. It's not like you take Reichel out and put somebody in, that line's still going to be productive. And I believe I heard it on the podcast I was listening to today. Pat Maroon is like mentoring Lukas Reichel. Like they sit next to each other on the bench.
Great.
He goes through the iPad with him. they've been sitting by each other on the flights where he's talking to him about things he's learned. Like, you want to break that up because you think everybody's is under this impression that Reichel has to be the number 2. Like,
it's not going to happen.
He's got to be the Robin to Connor Bedard's Batman, and he's not Robin. He's not even like
he's Lucas.
Yeah, he's not even the third iteration of Robin, whatever. Jason Todd,
Nightwing.
Yeah, Eric, are you with us on this?
Dick Grayson.
Basically, when it comes to Lukas Reichel right now, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Precisely. And another element of this that we have not mentioned is what we saw last year with Lukas Reichel is his confidence was wildly fragile.
Yeah.
So if he's feeling okay in this situation, don't change anything.
Right.
Just let him do what he's been doing. Okay, maybe for a 17th overall pick, you're expecting 60, 70 points a year, whatever. That's not going to happen, and that's okay. Not every first rounder is going to hit and be a huge producer and all that, but he's at least positively contributing to the team. And that is markedly different than what we saw last year out of him. Mm-hmm. And one other thing, kind of tying our two main conversations together so far tonight, a lot of people have been, slamming Luke Richardson for, there's no consistency with the lines. They're changing every day, blah, 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 blah. How are they supposed to establish any consistency? Well, look at the fourth line. He's kept them together because they are working. Right?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. To me, it's like, if that was working and then he's like, no, we got to have Lucas higher so he produces more, blah, blah, blah. He's got offensive magic. Then that would be something to be concerned about. But everyone whining that he's changing lines all day, every day, nonstop, there's no consistency. He's left the fourth line alone because they are working.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, couldn't agree more. I mean, Lukas Reichel, he might be ultimately, he's still 22 years old. I mean, the story's not written on him. He might end up being a third line winger for his career. A 50-point guy, a 50-point per season type guy who chips in when he can. But I just don't think throwing him up there right now and all of a sudden, to your point, Eric, we've seen what he is like when the expectations are high. And I mean, I just don't, you still got to work with this kid. So I don't know, Jimmy, is there anything else, Jimmy, that you haven't said on this yet?
All I would say is for the fans that are saying Lukas Reichel needs to be called up because look how productive he is appearing. Zoom out on the picture. Don't zoom in on Lukas Reichel. Zoom out and look at that line. That line is working. And I want to end this on a high note. If you asked me 2 months ago my opinion on Reichel, I would have said trade him. Right now, I'm liking the guy. I like what he's doing on the fourth line. He might have just found a role. Maybe it could be a decently long-term role. Who knows? But I'm like happy now with the kid. I see him on the ice. I'm like, hell yeah, there he is.
Yeah.
I'm actually happy to see him.
He's a player you actually need in the lineup right now.
Yeah.
In that role.
I feel like, why can't Blackhawks fans just look at that fourth line, look at Lukas Reichel and be like, yes, he's found a role.
I mean, I don't think any of us foresaw, speaking of Lukas Reichel, this way towards the end of November.
This is the most positive I ever thought I'd talk about him.
Yeah. No, it's a really good role for him right now, and he's around good people. And I don't know. So, folks, don't force feed this. Not now, especially when if you're like if you were really fighting for a playoff spot right now, or if it was like late February, early March, and you're like 5 points out of a playoff spot, you're like, we need to move this guy up now because we're struggling for offense. Fine, but that ain't this year. In the last season,
nope. The Lukas Reichel doesn't. That moving up doesn't solve your offensive woes. Tyler Bertuzzi, Teuvo Teravainen, Taylor Hall, those guys have got to score more to solve. Those are the guys that are like Connor Bedard struggling, but those three guys I named before him are like guys who should be helping carrying the load. They're not. Mm-hmm. So
no, they're not. They're not performing at all. In fact, some of them have been. I mean, Bertuzzi's just been
worthless.
Oh, it's just been awful.
Yeah, and like I mentioned earlier, like putting Reichel with them would actually make things worse because statistically, even in a small sample size, they actually play worse with Reichel.
Yeah, because
they're up 2-0. Sorry, go ahead.
No, those fancy stats basically are who possesses the puck during that time. Like Corsi and Fenwick, correct me if I'm wrong, that's whoever possesses the puck is Corsi. And when Reichel was with Bedard, they Corsi, whatever the hell it is. Corsi. They chase the puck. So
yeah.
Well, my mispronunciation is
he mispronounced it because Jim Corsi is a former NHL player.
Yes.
There you go.
That's why he's not able to pronounce it.
He's not Jim.
We've we've cracked the case.
It's all on brand. It's fine. It's totally fine. But
not a baseball reference.
Yeah, they accounted for both goals in the Blackhawks last game, and now people are like, split them up.
Oh my gosh.
What are we doing here?
I feel like you should have the opposite reaction. If a line is responsible for 2 goals, you go, keep them together. Now, if the argument is maybe this line needs a couple more minutes together, I'll throw you a bone back. Okay, maybe. But
yeah, fine.
Yeah.
Sure.
If they're your best line in the hockey game, and that means you give them a few extra shifts in the second and third period, great, go. I mean, I don't care.
Yeah.
And I think referencing something I heard earlier this week, I'm pretty sure Richardson did that during a game against Anaheim. They were the best line before TV timeout, and then the TV timeout happened, and then he went right back with the fourth line after the TV timeout. So Richardson sees that too. It's not just us; it's the coaching staff.
Yeah. I agree. So really good breakdown, Jimmy, statistically. Appreciate your thoughts on the Fenwick and the Corsage. Corsini. Corsi. Got it. Okay. Just wanted to be sure. We love you, Sean. Let's go. Let's go to another topic. And actually, Jimmy, this is a big Jimmy show right now. Frank. So the other Frank Nazar is still doing well. So now the other thing that is on the tip of everyone's tongue is, well, fine then. If you're not going to fire Richardson, if you're not going to give Reichel more minutes, well, then bring up some of the kids. So now everyone's saying, when are we going to see these guys? Lots of action around. Nazar's got 8 goals right now.
8 goals, 8 assists. These are 10 points.
Right. And that's 14 games, 15 games that they played?
He's played 14. He had to miss a game due to personal reasons.
Got it. So in 14 games, he's got 16 points. So he's going to the NHL Hall of Fame because he's doing this in the AHL right now. But anyway, let's break this open. I want a Rockford report, but first let's talk about Nazar, and I'm going to defer to Eric. Frank Nazar, should we bring him up now, Eric? What do you say?
Nope.
Yeah. Awesome. Sean, what do you think?
No, I think when you bring him up for good. You don't bring him up and then send him back down, which if you brought him up now, he's going to go back down. So don't bring him up until it's time, until he's ready to be in the NHL permanently.
Well, the other thing, too, is that like right now, Rockford is putting together a string of really good games, and they're playing really good hockey. You want these kids to experience winning together, don't you? I mean, why would you break them up now? I mean, Eric was going over the playoff format of the AHL, which is just nonsense. It's just craziness. I don't understand it. Eric, do you mind throwing it out there real quick for our audience if you have it?
Yep, I've got it pulled up still.
23 teams make it or something? I mean, it's just like...
Yeah, so basically this is all because the AHL is not evenly aligned within their divisions, and they're trying to minimize travel for teams and all that. You know, I understand that, keep costs down, whatever. But at the same time, it just creates havoc as far as the playoff standings and all of that. So basically how it works, 23 teams will qualify for the 2025 Calder Cup playoffs, which consists of 5 rounds of playoffs. Obviously, much different than what NHL fans are used to. So who makes up those 23 teams? That's a good question. The top 6 teams from the Atlantic Division, the top 5 teams from the North and Central Divisions, and the top 7 teams from the Pacific Division. And you might say, why are there different amounts of teams in each division making the playoffs? Well, because the divisions are not equally sized. Mm-hmm. So the more teams that are in the division, the more teams that make it in the playoffs out of that division. And again, like I said, it's a 5-round playoff. So the first round is a best of 3, and then the next 2 rounds are best of 5, and then the final 2 rounds are best of 7. So it's kind of just a mess all around, very difficult to follow and keep track of. And, before we even started recording, Andy asked me, how does it work? And I said, I have no idea, because they have changed it so many times over the last few years that no one can keep track of it. And every time they realign and whatever, it changes. And so it's a mess. But what I described is how the 2025 Calder Cup playoffs will work. So, and we were saying this ahead of recording, that with the top 5 teams in the Central Division making it, if the playoffs started today, the Ice Hogs would be in the playoffs.
Roger that. So, excellent. Thank you for that, Eric. So to that point, Jimmy, we got to keep these kids together, right? And how have they been looking? I mean, obviously, Frank Nazar is smoking right now. It looks like Lev Shinov is getting a little bit better. What about that guy, Kevin Korchinski? How's he doing right now? Korchinski, sorry. Sorry. I'm on Sean's case early.
I know how to say Kevin Korchinski.
I know.
I'm catching strays over here.
But you can't get Jim Corsi right?
But it's the Corsi thing. It's the fact that you showed up late.
That's true.
These are all of this tomfoolery. This is all endearment, Sean.
Shenanigans, goings on. I say all that to say this. Vis-a-vis, I digress.
All right, Jimmy. Jimmy, what do you got for us in Rockford? What's been going on down there?
Well, if you remember my previous article and the last time we talked about them on the Rinkcast, I talked about this team just can't get on the ice. I think at the time of the article, they only had like 8 games, of the podcast 9, and they were like 3-7. Now they got games. They played 5 games in the past like week and a half. They went 3-1-1. They really showed out. And the biggest thing I will say is Nazar. I watched a couple games. Nazar is just the best player on the ice. He's awesome. He's someone to be excited for next year. And the one loss.
Whoa. Oh, what'd you say?
Next year.
Oh,
next year.
I think he'll probably make it to the team.
I want instant gratification.
I mean, he'll have a couple.
Add the cart.
Next week is what I meant to say. Anyway, to bring back where I was in that 3-1-1, that one loss they had, it was the game that Nazar missed for personal reasons, and it was the first time and the only time so far the Rockford Ice Hawks have been shut out. They lost 4-0. If that doesn't show the impact Nazar has on this team, I don't know what does.
Yeah.
So that's just another reason why you shouldn't call him up right now, is because this Rockford team relies on this kid. Like guys like Cini and Mayhew and Doc and Slaggert, they all rely on this kid. And this kid is making everyone around him better. And that's what you want for a young centerman who is asked to do first line centerman things at such a young age in the AHL.
Yeah.
And to bring it back to Korchinski and Levshinov, I think the best way to describe it is you're going to have to swallow the tough, bitter pill of growing pains and really bad young defenseman mistakes, because they're both making them.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, I think the biggest one was in their previous game against the Stars. Levshinov was backing into his zone, and Stars had 3 forwards coming forward, and he tried to make a behind the pass across the zone pass to his defensive mate, who I believe was Phillips, and it just went straight to the Dallas Star player right between the dots. And Weeks had to make an incredible save to prevent a goal. And you look at that play and you go, ugh, that's ugly. And I mean, we're going to get more ugly at times, but the rest of the game, he really settled in. He saw the ice really well, and he made cross ice passes, both vertically and horizontally down the ice. And it was like, wow, professionals don't even make that kind of accurate read. Yeah. And he did. And that's something to really rest your head on. I think the biggest thing with Levshinov and a little bit with Korchinski, and I mentioned this in the chat a while back, he really does play hero ball. You know, we all heard of hero ball, like Aaron Rodgers, like, oh, I'm just gonna rely on my skill, I can do it. And he's learning very quickly he can. And that hero ball is gonna get worked out of him. And it should be fun to watch.
Yeah. Awesome. I mean, do you think it's realistic we might not even see Kevin Korchinski next season? I mean, does he still need, I mean, it's too early to tell?
Too early to tell. And the thing about Sorensen is he's really got this team humming. I think the 2 biggest things I definitely want to point out is how this team plays defensively. This team only has like 179 penalty minutes on the season, second lowest in the entire Central Division. And in terms of their penalty kill, at 86.8%. That's 5th in the entire AHL. This team is the 8th youngest team in the AHL, and it's top 5 in penalty kill, and it's not getting penalized. Yeah. Like, this is a disciplined team, and it comes from the defensemen. And
well, it's not only that. There's some fruits of labor from Kyle Davidson's drafting. If you draft for speed, you're not taking penalties.
Oh yeah, and
if we're seeing it. Team, you can keep up.
Yeah, and we're seeing it not just with Korch, Levchnov, and Nazar. We're seeing it, in Slaggert and Doc, and even a little bit from a guy like Marcel and Gavin Hayes.
Awesome.
These guys in their first or second professional year are doing well.
Isn't Drew Comesso playing better too, Jimmy?
He had his best performance. Yeah, I think it was. He had his best performance Friday night against the Stars. It was a 2-1 win. He had like 27 saves. He looked really solid. I watched the game and I was like, this is the best performance he's had all year. Like it was. If he can keep that form, there should be reason to be excited. And Mitchell Weeks followed that game with what was an overtime loss. Only gave up 3 goals, and it looks like Weeks and Comesso are finding form. Again, like with more games, they're finding it. They're figuring it out because they're actually on the ice. They're getting
Seth Jones is hurt, obviously, for the Blackhawks. The Blackhawks really haven't been bit yet by the injury bug up front, and knock on wood, really hope they don't. If for some reason that happens and a move needs to be made, who up front would you think is the next logical player to come up? And maybe it's dependent on what forward goes down, but it certainly should not be Frank, even if that, is an offensive forward that goes down. But what say you about that? I've got 2 names I'm thinking of, but
I actually have 2 names, and I wrote them both in my article, and they've really exploded in the last 5 games in their offensive production. Cole Gutman and Brett Seney have really showed up offensively.
Okay. Gotcha.
Cole Gutman has 6 goals, 11 points. He's now second on the team in goals. Seney, he's 9 points in 15 games. They've both started to really open up offensively. Thanks in most part to Frank Nazar just taking the ice. Right. But yeah, these guys are finishing when they're being asked to.
Yeah. What about Slaggert and Doc? I mean, do you think that those are 2 guys that could be called up at some point? I mean, hard-nosed games, grinding it out. Doc obviously has a new gear this year, has more of an edge to him.
Yeah, Doc is playing really well. He's still second in the team in points. I think I kind of grouped together Nazar, Slaggert, and Doc together as guys that I think KD really just wants to see a full year at Rockford.
Yeah, that makes sense.
He'd rather sacrifice Gutman or Seney or even Sanford for a couple games at the NHL level before he wants to expose these guys, because you get I'm getting the vibe from Kevin that he doesn't want a player to be like on their heels, be like, hey, someone's injured, good luck. It's like, no, I'd rather see you after a full off season in camp, with an expectation like, you can make the team out of camp. And if you make the team out of camp, you'll know before camp ends.
Gotcha.
He definitely doesn't seem like the kind of guy that's like, I'm going to throw him in halfway through the season because someone's injured. You got Gutman, you got Seney for that reason.
Yeah. I'm still hoping Del Mastro can come up at some point too. I mean, has he been pretty decent this year? I really haven't been following like you have.
He's decent defensively. He's not lighting up the score sheet, but he's usually the 3rd or 2nd pairing defenseman.
Yeah. But I mean, his NHL, prognostication is probably a bottom 6D, isn't he?
Yeah, bottom pairing defenseman.
Bottom pairing, not bottom.
That's kind of what he played when he was called up, but that's what he's playing right now on the Ice Hogs. And if he were to call up, I would expect him kind of have the Brody, Allen role, just very protected on that bottom pairing. But yeah, I mean, he's playing very well defensively, and that's about all we can take right now. Only 3 points, but defensively, he's doing well.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that report. Appreciate it, Jimmy. It's great that you got your eyes on that as closely as you do, because I don't know if some of our counterparts in the blogging podcast world have a close of a take on Rockford. Fingers on the pulse as you do. So appreciate it, man. That's great.
If you see how it's online, you can make generalized statements. Come on.
Yeah. How about that? Informed conversations.
Yeah. I will end my Rockford talk with this.
Yeah.
If Chicago, I'm speaking directly to the fans. If the Blackhawks are leaving a bitter taste in their mouth, let Rockford be your palate cleanser, because they're fun. They got some guys to pay attention to. Cleanse your palate with a decent AHL team right now.
They're probably cheaper to watch too, aren't they?
I mean,
they're definitely
certain
easier to watch.
I mean, they're probably easier to watch the AHL affiliate than it is the NHL.
Probably, and
yeah.
I love that transition, Sean.
Good segue. Good segue.
Other streaming service.
I was able to keep this ticker, this banner on the bottom it's been there for 3 weeks because Shawnee's always got the updates on the TV. So, folks, if you're looking for a nice warm night in front of the fireplace the night before Thanksgiving, sounds like it's still going to be difficult to watch our beloved Hawks. Again, so rebutter that popcorn. If your gummy bears are gone, grab some Milk Duds. And we've got Sean Fitzgerald with the latest on the CHSN TV debacle. Shawnee, what do you got for us, pal?
Okay, so there's currently no update on the deal with Comcast. Nothing. Nada. Zip. Zilch. Nothing going on.
It's been quiet. It's been quiet this week.
It has really been quiet. Their app, since the initial launch, I really haven't heard too many issues on it. But the company that did create their app also created Bally Sports' app, which had issues for over a year. So if you just keep that in mind. So if you have issues with the app, it might continue. I put an informal poll out in the Twitterverse. I only got 24 votes, so a small sample size, but 0% of people that voted are using the CHSN app. The winner is illegal stream, followed up by not watching games.
Yeah, you didn't put ESPN Plus out of market.
I didn't. I only had 4 options, and
because that's a cheat code almost.
It is. If you can figure out how to use a VPN, put it on your computer, stream it on your TV, you can pay for ESPN Plus. A lot easier. And also the big thing. So Mark Lazarus had an article last week or so about players on the Blackhawks talking about how it's easier to watch games out of market. You're going to lose the casual hockey fan. Well, the Bulls. Nikola Vucevic, who doesn't tweet very often, tweeted on November 20th, Bulls fans in Chicago realizing they could actually watch the game tonight since it's on ESPN, and tweeted a GIF of Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson popping champagne from Wedding Crashers. You're getting trolled by players on teams on your network because fans in market cannot watch this. This is beyond embarrassing. And I've talked to just people who are casual hockey fans or who are fans of the White Sox. They say they're not going to pay. They're not going to pay $20 a month to watch this.
Why would you?
Exactly. So
product is junk.
It's a junk product. It costs too much. And I will say that the company that did set up their app also set up Altitude TV's app. So Altitude TV's app is pretty good. From what I've heard, there hasn't been many issues. I think that's kind of the good standard app out there. But as far as any updates for people watching on Comcast, no updates. I don't think you're going to get it, honestly. I think Substandard Media, the media company they put in charge, their name is actually Standard Media, in charge of getting it on Comcast is not going to get the deal done. So for those Blackhawks fans who can't watch games, I don't really have much hope for you. Go buy the digital antenna. Hope it's not windy. Hope it doesn't rain. You know, this time of year, we never get that stuff. We never get snow, so you should be fine. Absolutely. Atrocious. So, yeah, hopefully we'll have another update next week. Maybe they're just taking the Thanksgiving week off to lick their wounds. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the update, Shawnee. I mean, this unfortunately for Blackhawks fans, but fortunately for Rinkcast followers, this is going to be a weekly thing with Sean Fitzgerald, folks. I mean, there's no end in sight right now, and man, what a nightmare! It's very sad.
It really is. And if anybody, any of our listeners can find, I can't find it anywhere. If anyone can find the amount of subscribers that CHSN's app has gotten since its launch, you could provide me with that information. I'd love to have it because I don't think it's that many. And I'd like to articulate that in a piece in the not so distant future.
Awesome. Good stuff. Excellent. Well, other Blackhawk news is we can touch on a couple other topics. Sasha Boisvert, that's interesting. University of North Dakota, last June's one of 2 first-round picks from Kyle Davidson. Was Rookie of the Week in the NDHH. I can't even remember not the CCHA. NHCA. I don't know. Whatever conference North Dakota's in right now. Player of the Week, Rookie of the Week, which is really, really cool. The other thing is the World Junior Tournament. Some of the potential rosters, probable rosters came out. Oliver Moore is going to have a big-time role for Team USA this year.
He had a big weekend, too. He had, I think, 2 goals against Notre Dame over the weekend. Yep. And his teammate and other Blackhawks prospect, Sam Renzel, was named the Impact Player of the Week with 2 goals and 2 assists. Against Notre Dame.
At the NCAA level, the Blackhawks have some really good prospects going, which is key. And the other thing about the World Junior Tournament coming up is the Blackhawks, there will be a player on the World Junior rosters, more than likely that the Blackhawks will probably be picking within the top 5 come next June, whether that's James Hagens, whether that's Michael Misa, a few other guys out there. What's the big dude's name that we really like, Eric? I'm forgetting his name.
Porter Martone.
Porter Martone, yeah. Porter Martone. He's a real prospect. So that World Junior Tournament that's coming up, start paying attention, folks. Team USA is going to be really good again with Trey Augustine and net, Oliver Moore we mentioned, and Perot and a few others, James Hagens, who's supposedly going to be the number 1 overall. Jimmy really likes Misa, who's damn good. He's a pure sniper in the OHL.
That's my hedge my bets in case I get disappointed in not winning the lottery guy.
There you go. No, but that's smart. That's smart. Right. He's definitely a real hockey player. So some good stuff with the prospects. Any other thoughts on the Blackhawks, guys, before we wrap up our show? No? I want to give a quick – yeah,
Jack Pridham has 4 goals and 4 assists since moving from the BCHL to the OHL. He was one of the prospects that moved over. So, and he's got 8 points in his 5 games. So that's pretty good.
Yeah.
He was Blackhawks' 3rd-round pick this past year.
Yep. And our favorite AJ Spilasi might make the U.S. Junior roster. We'll see.
Oh,
with the expanded rosters, there was a blurb that says that he might have a chance. That'd be great for the kid.
The unbridled enthusiasm over him will.
Oh, it'll just spill over into. Well, not from Ben Pope, who doesn't really like the World Junior Tournament.
No, he'd much rather watch Columbus play anybody.
Right.
And to all these players that we've mentioned, all I have to say is, call them up. Let's do it. Come on.
Yeah, play the kids. That worked.
Play the kids.
Last time. That worked out just terrifically. Hey, one quick shout out. I want to just a quick shout out. Nolan Allen's actually quietly had a decent season for the Hawks. He's played 17 games. He plays a role. I mean, you could say he's just kind of a guy, but I think there is something to say for that defenseman that you don't notice. When you don't notice a defenseman, he doesn't make a lot of big gaffes. He just plays a simple game.
Yeah.
Now, whether he's part of the plan, I don't know. But for a 21-year-old defenseman playing in the NHL, he's doing pretty well.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll say, it's good to be a guy at 21 years old because you're thinking, oh, if he's a guy at 21, maybe at 23, he's a competent bottom pairing guy. At worst, a 7th defenseman, which you could do a lot worse for a guy like Nolan Allen.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a Blackhawks loyalist going back to the 80s and 90s, I think Nolan Allen's ceiling is probably Keith Brown, or something, something along those lines. But Keith Brown had a nice career. Yeah.
Ben Pope did an article, a feature piece on Nolan Allen. So if you want more Nolan Allen news, check that out. Ray Nepientek is currently probably grinding his teeth someplace.
Yeah.
This talk.
Yeah. There's 2 names that come up that our buddy Ray is not a fan of.
Nolan Allen, Seth Orr, and
then make it 3.
Philip Kurashev.
Make it 4 then.
Mrazek.
And
there you go. That's the one that I was thinking of. Yeah.
Let's name the guys that Ray does like.
Yeah. Ray, we're on to you.
Yeah. Ray is just a generational hater, and I can appreciate it. The guy dropped a pipe bomb at 12:40 in the morning last night.
Was he late to the podcast? Why are we slandering Ray?
I don't know. Sorry, Ray.
Love
it's
you,
not
Ray.
about you. It's about, we're honoring your opinions.
Ray, get on the website and just roast us. I mean, not the website, the podcast next week, and just roast us.
There's also one other thing that continues to come up, and Eric and I touched base on it again today, is that Brandon Hagel and Dylan Strome have gone on to do pretty well, both for Tampa Bay and for the Washington Capitals. Dylan Strome is having a really good start to his year. That has led to a lot of Blackhawk faithful saying, how on earth can we let these guys go? And oh my gosh, what terrible moves. That Hagel trade was terrible. We let Strome walk out the door. And we've said this so many times. We're going to say it again. If Hagel and Strome were still part of the Chicago Blackhawks right now, the Blackhawks would be battling for third to last instead of dead last in the Western Conference right now. And their best prospect would be a stay-at-home defenseman who may or may not make it. You got Connor Bedard now here because of these moves. You got all these prospects here because of these moves. You can't have it both ways. You can't do it. There were business decisions made so that Jimmy could sit here and talk about Rockford, so that we could talk about the young guys coming up, so that you can't watch them on TV. And so Eric, any thoughts about that? Because I was very frustrated about that this morning when walking the dogs, and you and I went back and forth a bit.
Yeah, that was brought up. There was a tweet. I forget it. It might have been Jay Fresh. I don't remember. But somebody tweeted out something about like, oh, remember when everyone said that Tampa Bay overpaid for Brandon Hagel? And I just sent that in our chat and said, yes, I do.
Mm-hmm.
I do. Now, of course, yeah, Hagel has gone on to have a very productive last few years, and that's dandy. That's great. It's, I love seeing that he's producing well, and yeah, that's great. But at the same time, it's like, well, okay, so maybe you have one nice player. I think in Chicago, he probably would have topped out as like a 50, 60 point guy. He wasn't going to be a point a game guy in Chicago. Yeah. He's playing with Nikita Kucherov.
Yeah.
And Braden Point. So, there's only so high of a ceiling that he would have had in Chicago. And again, you don't win a Stanley Cup with one or two guys. You look at the Hawks Cup teams, they were so incredibly deep. You would have had a guy like Brandon Hagel on your third line at best.
Yeah.
And that's not what was going to be the case here.
No. And we were just talking about Oliver Moore, and we were just talking about Sasha Boiver.
Right. And you're hoping that both of those guys are going to be, are they going to be top line guys? No, probably not. And that's okay. But if they're both solid middle six guys who are chipping in with 40, 50 points a year, that is, that speaks more than having a third line guy who's putting up 50 points. If you can have two of those guys, I would rather have two of those guys.
Yeah. And those are the two guys, along with Boris Tkachuk and Taylor Radish, both who have moved on from the Blackhawks. But those two picks, Oliver Moore and Boiver, are going to potentially be very valuable hockey players at a time when Brandon Hagel will probably be slowing down. So,
and nobody knew Brandon Hagel was going to be this good. Remember, he was an undrafted free agent. The Blackhawks signed to an AHL contract, and he just played his way on the NHL roster, and they thought his value was at his highest when they traded him. It wasn't like he was some draft pick that they gave up on early. They found him, they helped develop him, and then they flipped him at his peak. That's what good teams do. It's good rebuilding teams do that. You find an asset that's overvalued by somebody else, and you undervalue it, and you get things of value for the future. That's what all the good teams do.
Yeah, and Dylan Strome, tank casualty.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, would have been great to have him around, but it was very clear. It's like, let him go because we want this guy named Connor Bedard. So let Dylan Strome walk away so we can be very, very bad at hockey.
And while Brandon Hagel benefited from playing with Kucherov, Dylan Strome's benefiting from playing with Alex Ovechkin. You got to think who he's playing with. And Ovechkin's hurt now, so you're going to see Dylan Strome probably come back down to earth.
Well, we can pull it up right now and how he's been doing since the injury. Let's have a look, shall we? Well, we've got a minute here. He's still doing pretty darn well.
In 3 games, 1 point.
Yeah, 3 games, 1 point without Alex Ovechkin.
Yeah, and I kind of want to come back to the Hagel thing.
And only 4 shots.
Yeah, I want to come back to the Hagel thing.
Wow, how about that?
Got Hagel.
Someone should tweet that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, Tampa Bay got Hagel specifically because they wanted to keep their contending window open, which they have. I mean, the summer after they drafted him, they made it to Stanley Cup final, but he did not play well that Stanley Cup final race. He only had 6 points in 23 games. In the last 2 years, consecutive first-round exits. Now, they're playing well this year, but you never know. The Eastern Conference is still stout. And they saw Hagel as the guy that can help continue to get this team to the Stanley Cup finals. And since then, in the year they made it to the finals, he didn't perform all too well. And in the last 2 years, the rest of the team around him kind of didn't perform. They lost in 6 and 23 and 5 in last year.
Yeah.
And who knows if they're going to bounce back this year. They got a new roster, flipped out Steven Stamkos for basically Jake Gensel, and they're playing pretty well, but they're third in their conference. Third in their division. And who knows? Can they continue this winning, which is what this, trade was meant for? Who knows?
Well, and further to that point, it's a deal that made sense for both teams at the time and still makes sense now.
Right.
And especially this trade in particular, what grinds my gears is there always has to be a perceived winner of a trade. It was a win-win for both sides. It made sense for both sides. It still makes sense for both sides. Both sides were getting what they wanted. Yeah. Why can we not be happy with that?
Yeah, and the Hawks didn't lose the trade because Radish and what was the other guy?
Boris Kachuk.
Kachuk didn't work out. We didn't lose the trade because those guys didn't work out.
Those guys, they weren't the 2 first-round picks were the prize of the trade. Don't let Uncle Al tell you otherwise, because he did.
Yeah,
and he's wrong.
Radish was a guy that was thought of as maybe a guy that could be a bottom sixer if they re-sign him, but he didn't play well enough to do that, and they let him go. And
he didn't score 25 goals when I said he would.
And then Kachuk was
3.
And then Kachuk was nothing. They couldn't even get a 7th rounder for him. He was just that bad. Yeah. But no one should look at those 2 guys failing and be like, oh, they lost the trade, because they were the lowest on the totem pole of importance on this trade.
Tampa's where the Blackhawks were in 2016-17. They're trying to hold on to past glory. They're top heavy with not enough depth. Yeah. Soon they're going to involve. Soon Tampa's going to evolve into what Pittsburgh is now. Yeah. That's how it goes. That's the price of winning. When you win in the NHL, you have to pay your guys, and then if you don't have young, cheap talent to replace them, eventually it all goes away.
Yeah. And they're 7th in their conference. They're 3rd in their division. This is a powerhouse team at the turn of the decade, and now it's. I don't want to say it's faltering, but cracks are showing.
You can say that. Yeah.
I don't want to go that far, but because you never know. They can
showing some more. Yeah. Well, good stuff tonight, guys. Good show, and I think we're going to wrap it up, folks, if that works for you all. And happy Thanksgiving, Hawks fans out there and Rinkcast faithful, and thank you for following us. And hope for a warm and safe Thanksgiving and a warm and safe holiday season, but you will see us probably next week. And good work, Eric Andrews, Sean Fitzgerald, and Jimmy O'Malley. Thank you all for your stellar reporting and following of the Blackhawks. Until next time, folks, happy Turkey Day. Gobble, gobble. Enjoy. And we'll see you all soon.